Curiosity. What are you so curious about? Everything, Mr. Curiosity.
Alrighty, folks, Joe Snedeker here. You know me as Mr. Curiosity. And oh, baby, am I curious about this topic today and this guy that
I froze on me, Joe.
You're frozen? Uh-oh, I'm not frozen. Are you frozen?
You were frozen for a second. You want to start again?
Yeah, I like doing it the way it is. Frozen. Okay. Frozen is a good way to start. Who needs perfection? Anyway, I got to tell you how this whole thing unfolded, because I think that's pretty funny. I'm with Lance Hoppen from the great band Orleans. Yes, a part of my teenage years and beyond. So I see that you guys were in Jersey back in June or July, I forget, on tour. So, you know, here's innocent me. I love going to concerts. I see that it was a private show, everyone. So I email on the Orleans website, contact, hey, I'm thinking about coming to your show. Could you give me any information? It says on the website it's private. And then I see the email back and I see the name on it, Lance Hoppen. And immediately I'm like, wait a minute. They must have a team of people who respond to their email. This can't be Lance. So I emailed you back, and then you got back to me and said, this is Lance. It is a private show, but I couldn't believe it was you. And then we started emailing, and here we are. This is excellent.
I am what my dad would call chief cook and bottle washer. Yeah, very hands-on. You know, we're a small organization, and I am the logistics. I'm kind of at the helm, is what it is.
I love it. So I have a couple more things to say, and then I'm not going to be a big mouth. I'm going to let you do all the great talking, because there's some good signs here. So number one is I played this at work today. I work for WNEP here in Northeastern PA. I was just getting ready, and I played this in the control room. I better not play anymore because there'll be copyright infringement. But there's this 24-year-old girl. This is a good sign in the background, who starts screaming, I love that song. Who's playing that? And I'm thinking, this is perfect. It's relevant now to all ages. If there's a 24-year-old screaming, it's not just, you know, the 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond that love not only that song, but the band. And I played it for a couple other. I was doing a little sampling at work. And yes, everybody knows not only that song, but the band Orleans. You guys are transient through time, and you are the bassist for Orleans. So this is excellent.
Right. So where do you want me to start? What do you have to?
I'd like to start with this. So I did just some basic research. I like to go in and be honest and organic and flow with it. It says you guys started out in Woodstock, New York.
Right. So let me back
where you started out. I like to know where the Hoppen boys were born and all that stuff.
All right. So let's not get too in the weeds, but
I like the weeds.
My parents were players. They were musicians. They met right after World War II. My dad was a trumpet player. My mom was a really gifted singer and piano player. She could play the classics with the best of them, you know, trained and sing opera, or she could just belt out the standards of her day. And my dad was good, but she was great. So they met playing gigs, and then they had, you know, they're married. There were four.
What part of the country is this?
This is Long Island, New York.
Okay, all right.
My mom was born in Westchester and dad in Jamaica, Queens. So there were four of us. My sister Linda was eldest, and my older brother Larry, myself, and my younger brother Lane. So they're all the L's, L, 4 L's. And we were all musical. Linda never took to it big time, but Larry was prodigious. Anything he picked up, he could play. Played by ear, so we were all trained one way or another. Larry played trumpet in the high school band. I played clarinet. Unfortunately, my dad brought one home one day and handed it to me, and I cried. And then for the next 8 years, I played clarinet. And Lane also was a trumpet player. So we all were trained one way or another. I guess the biggest regret of my life was not letting my mother, who was a piano teacher too. I wouldn't let her teach me because it's your mother, right? So
yeah. You got to rebel.
Yeah, it's a skill I don't have to this day. And anyway, the four of us were surrounded by music from all the time and grew up in that environment. So, fast forward, Larry was 2 years advanced in school.
Get out. This is high school.
Yeah, they just kept pushing him forward, which was good and not so good. He was small, he was short, and he was 2 years young. So his peer group was older and bigger. And so that was, psychologically had its own ramifications. But he went off to college at 16, I think it was. And I was I was 13 or 12, right around there. And he was very intimidating because he was so good. And he was in garage bands and all that before I ever picked up a guitar. But once he left, there was one in the closet, and I started plunking on one string to McCartney bass lines. And then I figured out, oh, this string relates to that string and that string to that. So I gravitated to be a bass player, but not until he left the house. And then when he came back, suddenly he had this voice that nobody knew. Before that, I was like the fair-haired singer, right? My mom, we all said, and I had that boyish falsetto thing. But he came back with this voice. It was like, wow, where'd that come from? So,
so in high school, he was not singing in the house or anything. He was playing instruments. He was excelling in school, but he wasn't, you never heard his voice. You never heard the Golden Pipes.
Right. I never saw his garage bands play any kind of gig or anything or rehearse. And I don't know really what he did there. I know other guys sang, but he played piano and he played guitars, but he never revealed that voice until he came back from school. And so he went to college because of, the folks insisted you got to have something to fall back on. You got to be a music teacher, right? So he went begrudgingly.
What was he majoring in?
He was a music major, right? He was going to be a music teacher at Ithaca College, upstate New York, and he, but he dropped out after a while. Like I don't know when, a semester or two or a year, whatever, and he dropped out. And they talked him into going back, and then he dropped out again because all he really wanted to do was play. And so when it was my turn, and I was near top of my class. The only reason I wasn't valedictorian was I started goofing off in my junior year. I learned how to do that. So it came my turn to go to college. I didn't want to go, so they didn't force me. And that was a good thing. So
why do you think, to get into your brain, why do you think, if you have this air of intellectual superiority, why didn't you, I know music was your inspiration perhaps at the time, but why didn't you say, I'll go be engineer, I'll be a doctor, I'll be a lawyer? It just didn't interest you, or was it rebellion? Why not want to go?
Because, when I was a kid, I thought I might become a vet. I had a love of animals.
Okay.
But that, that didn't turn out to be my path, my calling. Like Larry, I didn't want to pursue fame. I just wanted to be a working professional musician. That's where my heart, right? Ever since the Beatles played Ed Sullivan, and I plunked up.
I got to stop you right there, because I'm 55 years old and you're just a little older. But my point is, every band that I admire, whether it's Jackson Browne, whether it's Blue Oyster Cult, whether it's Aerosmith, pick any band, you guys all say the same thing, which is totally amazing to me. It's like, and I think here's how we got the brightest and best years in rock and roll in the 70s. I think all of you guys who were brilliant, who could have done anything, you see the Beatles on TV and it changed your whole life. And you guys had no other objective but yet to be them. So now we get the best and the brightest of 18-year-olds in the country who want to play rock. And then what comes next? The best music in history, the 70s. That's my theory.
That's a good theory.
You guys all have the same story. I love it. So that changed you like that.
Right. So it was a seminal moment. It was like a turning point for a lot of people, because there was something just magical about them. There was something intangible. You couldn't put it in a word. It was just a thing, right?
It must have been.
It was inspiring in a lot of ways. So it gave permission. It's like, wow, if that can happen, then this can happen. So in my parents' day, and why they sent Larry to college to have something to fall back on, was the music industry as we know it, and even in the 60s, as it was known, it didn't exist for them, right? So they didn't know that could be a thing. And so Larry got his band up in Ithaca. This is a good story because it all leads somewhere. So his band in Ithaca, he was in several bands while he was in college, but the one I want to mention is called Boffalongo, Boffalongo. Boffalongo was
for a time period here. Is this late 60s?
This is 68-ish.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Okay. The Boffalongo got a deal on United Artists and made a record, and I went to see them in the village. Took a train in, wore my leather pants or my leopard paste, whatever it was, So Larry was doing it, and I was a kid and he was doing it. And it was like, wow, I want to do that. And they made a second album. And on that second album, there was a guy came in the band named Sherman Kelly. Now, Sherman Kelly wrote Dancing in the Moonlight.
Oh.
So the last version of that band, the very last version of it, included Larry, Sherman's brother Wells Kelly, who Larry had heard play around town, a fantastic drummer.
Okay.
And so it was Larry, Wells, Sherman, a guy named Bob Lineback, who we'll come back to, and a bass player, Milton J. Anyway, a version of that band cut the original version of Dancing in the Moonlight. And this story will come back. So when Wells quit that band, he did it to join John Hall in Woodstock, New York, because John wanted to start his own band. And that was the final nail in the coffin for that band. So John and Wells,
Hall and your brother didn't know each other at the time, or did they?
Well, they had met, and actually they had met in New York City through Wells.
Oh, okay.
At a loft, at a studio where Dancing in the Moonlight was cut. It's a very convoluted family tree kind of story.
Yeah.
So when Larry and John met, they didn't know each other at that session, but it was already going on. And Larry picked up guitar, and they found themselves playing double guitar twin solos to Age of Aquarius. So it was just speaking the language of music.
Yeah, yeah.
So later on, John and Wells were making a band, went through some guys, didn't work out. Wells said, let's get Larry. So they called him down from Ithaca, and that was the genesis of Orleans. And now we're in January, February 1972.
Okay.
Just a trio. And I went to see that band too, which was fantastic because Wells played drums, but he also played great keyboards, and he could play a little bass. He could play foot drums and bass at the same time. And he had one song he'd play guitar on. John was playing guitar, but he could play drums, and he could play bass, and he could play piano, right? Larry was playing mostly bass, but of course he could play guitar and keys. And so they kept switching from song to song. And it was amazing. It was unbelievable. So that happened. This was my senior year and at high school, and I graduated in June. And by the fall, that trio wanted to expand. They needed to grow. And so they recruited the little brher.
Here comes the little brother. I love it.
Right? And I didn't fail the audition, I was definitely out of my element. I was over my head.
Yeah.
But they let me in, and it was on the job training in a lot of ways. And that was, I think our first gig was Halloween night, maybe in Rochester, New York. And then our first then we went in the spring. We did our toughed it out in New York City showcasing and got a record deal, and we were recording summer of '73, and that's where the first album comes from.
First album. So were you originally, you wanted to play the bass, or they just said, here, you're going to play the bass, or you played a little
No,
bit?
I was a bass player.
You were a bassist. So the clarinet faded to a bass. You just learned it on your own, or how did that happen?
Yeah, well, clarinet was a school thing, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know that. Yeah.
Right?
My daughter used to play it.
I did all that, and I did all that. Meanwhile, I picked up the bass about when I was 12, and by 14, I was in my first band.
Oh,
And it was a time of Chicago and all that stuff. And
yes.
so we had a 9-piece band. It was 4 horn players from the concert band that I knew, and I was the bass player and background singer. And we did all those school functions and played, did all that stuff. Played the proms, that kind of stuff. And then when I graduated that summer, a spin-off of that band, we played clubs, I don't know, 5 nights a week or something on Long Island. I was making, for an 18-year-old kid living home, making $125 a week in 1972, I had a real job, right?
I love it. Yeah. So were the parents okay with all this, or did they?
They were great with that. And
really?
like I said, they didn't make me go to school because they didn't want to. And they saw what happened with Larry, and we each had a little, fund that they had been building since we were little kids. So I had some money to walk away with and go up and start my life in Woodstock, New York.
I bet deep down inside, since music was in their genes and now your genes, they were happy. They were probably thinking this can't be overlooked. It's meant to be.
They were supportive, and they were happy with trepidation. And
yeah.
because who knew, right?
Who knows? So what about the name Orleans? Why did that happen? Or was it even called Orleans at the time?
Yeah, that predated my time. And so, but the story that they tell, the trio, the Wells, Larry, John trio, always told was they couldn't agree on a name. They had to have one, and they kicked around all these names until Wells spilled out Orleans because he had come back from France. He had been in Orleans, and they were playing, meters and Alan Toussaint and swampy stuff, along with, they were writing songs, but they were doing a lot of covers. Right. So they just said, well, we'll use this name, and then we'll change it, and then it never got changed.
In the first album or two has a little more of a blues influence, and it's got a little highbrow sound to it. Maybe a little bit. The first one, the second one.
Yeah, the first time, we were a kind of a funky bar band.
Yeah.
A lot of R&B tinge stuff, basically that style until you get a little deeper. So we made the first album, no big shakes. Cult following, broke regionally. New York.
So immediately there was a little bit of a tick. You felt something.
Well, it broke in upstate New York and Boston, and now Boston, that kind of thing.
72, 73. I'm trying to think what's hitting across the country now. The Beatles are broken up. You got some, like you said, Chicago. You got singer-songwriters emerging all over the place. You have
our first album was released on ABC with this in a batch with Rufus' first album. Steel. And so, class of 73 went on, we went on, but they went on bigger, but you know what I'm saying.
Are the first 2 albums under the same record company as all the other ones? I didn't check on that. I mean, or right, was it easy to get a deal?
First one was ABC. Second one we produced ourselves, and they hated it, and it was it was pretty self-indulgent, but they didn't hear any hits. Now, what's ironic is, and they were right, but what's ironic was Dance With Me in its first form and Let There Be Music. They were both on that album, but they weren't hit record. They were. That's right. They weren't hit records. They were hit songs but not hit records. So
to hear this from a fan, I must admit, don't get your feelings hurt. I always skip over the first 2 albums too. It's not my style, but I may be unique in that.
Well, the first album remains for some,
right.
The favorite, and it's very raw. We did it in 15 days on 15 tracks at Muscle Shoals Sound, right? Because that's because track 1 didn't work, right? So we had 15 tracks, and they wanted to do it in a week, but we said, please, we have 2 weeks.
Yeah, ABC. Are they throwing money at you, or how does that work? Did they say, here's 10 grand, here's 20 grand, make me an album? I don't know how that works.
I forget that deal specifically. It wasn't a big dollar deal, but we worked with Roger Hawkins and Barry Beckett, who are legendary players and producers.
So they sensed the talent. They sensed something in you guys. This wasn't just some bar band.
Yeah. So we got hooked up with them. We made that record. It didn't do much, but it got us on the map. We made the second album. ABC canned us didn't release it, except for, oddly enough, in the Netherlands, where we had a strong following. Who knew? So then we went back to New York City. We did our showcase thing again. And as the story goes, and I think this is true, this is the way I always tell it. We went to Max's Kansas City. We played 7 nights in a row, 2 sets a night, 3 on the weekend. And I believe it was the last show of the last night where we were just shot. That Chuck Plotkin, who was the head of A&R VP at Asylum, came to hear the band because there was a buzz. So I think he heard us on the last show of the last night. It makes a good story anyway. We don't.
Yeah, I like it.
And he heard through everything, and he said, "Yeah," and he signed us to Asylum, where was Jackson Browne and the Eagles and Joni Mitchell and you name it.
And you fit in with that southern, laid-back California vibe. You'd swear you guys are from there. I know it fits that.
It worked, So it worked, and so
what year is this? 73, 4?
This is 74.
Okay.
Right, and Chuck heard those songs, Let There Be Music, Dance With Me. He heard them for what, their merit. He made arrangements with ABC to buy the rights to re-record.
Oh.
And we did those songs, and Let There Be Music made like 40 something on the charts, cracked the door, and Dance With Me knocked it down. And then we were.
But is he like the Mutt? Is he like the Mutt Lange at the time? Like, does he know this is going to be good? I just need to polish it up, or like, does he say you guys, okay, you need to be a little more poppy, less riffy and bluesy? Like, how does that? Does he? Is it sequestering your creative outlet, your vibes? Like this guy telling me to do this and do that.
It's interesting. He was not a songwriter. He wasn't a player.
Right.
He was a great student of music. He knew what felt good. He knew song structure, and he knew how to persuade us to, take this idea and run with it, or change that and get through. And so he helped mold it.
The reason I ask is because, to me, and again, I represent tens of thousands, millions of people. Let There Be Music is well, it's a classic. But that's one of those albums. There's not a bad song on it. I'm looking. Fresh Wind, outstanding. Dance With Me, Time Passes, Your Life, Let There Be Music, Give One Heart. It's got a little funk. It's got pop. It's got singer-songwriter vibes.
Got an Americanized reggae, which was
yes.
We kind of were like vanguard of that.
Yeah. So did you finish this album and think, oh my God, we nailed it? Like, did you feel it? I mean, this is just an excellent album.
We were pleased with it. Yeah, we and it was a learning growth experience for everybody, especially me. So coming out of that experience, of course, then Dance With Me hit the radio. Oh, then everything changed at home. My mom was like,
she hears her son on the
biggest
radio.
fan, like telling everybody, and so at that point, and John tells the same thing. The parents stopped bugging you to go back to school or whatever. They get it.
And without I don't know, gossiping here, is John Hall, is he sitting down writing? I think he's the songwriter of most of those songs, or all those songs. Is
John and his former wife Johanna were prolific songwriters and high quality songwriters. They put out a lot of quantity and quality. Meanwhile, Larry was writing, Wells was writing, everybody was vying for space, but John was just the bull, or the Leo, the lion. So he was the absolute driving force.
And you guys accepted that and said, okay, let's let him write these hits, so to speak, these pop charms, these nuggets.
The songs spoke for themselves.
Okay.
They all had a pass muster, with producer and internally, and everybody got something, but John got the lion's share. And because John wrote all these songs, he sang all these songs. But then, ironically, the ones that were out of his range, like the lead on Dance With Me, and later the lead vocal on Still the One, these were not in John's range, and they defaulted to Larry. And so the magic combination,
how that happened.
The magic combination was the writing of the Halls and Larry's voice.
So the ones that become the hits are not like planned, let's have this guy sing it. Your brother, it's more like he couldn't hit what the expectations were. So you defaulted to the next guy. That's interesting.
I'm sorry, you froze on me again. What was the end of that sentence?
I said that's very interesting that it wasn't like a planned attack, that these 2-3 poppy nuggets would be sung by someone else.
No, no, it's just like it all was organic. And so another key thing is we kind of thought of ourselves as players who sang, and Chuck thought of us as singers who played.
Yeah.
And so he approached it from a different side. And you can hear from the first, second album into Let There Be Music and then Waking and Dreaming, you can hear the development of the vocal style, the polish, the doubling, the exactness of it. And you have to remember, there was no auto-tune, there was no digital editing, there was no fixing stuff. You had to have 3 or 4 guys in at the same time on the same mic, in balance, singing in tune, and the same phrasing matching each other all at once. And then you had to match it. You had to do it again. And so all that stuff is for real. Now there's like lots of tricks, and we take advantage of them.
I was going to say you're taking advantage of it now. Right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, everybody does, and that's what and it saves time, and you get a similar result. But that stuff's all organic, every bit of it. It was you could do things, but it was not like you can do these days. So there you go. Let There Be Music.
So that's 1975. Does that?
And Dance With Me being a hit changed everything again, because that funky R&B bar band now was like America. It's
yes.
Right. So we wound up touring with Melissa Manchester. So we got cast in a kind of an MOR thing.
I don't know if okay.
And so and we adapted to that. So these are just stages of the growth. And
I would think it would be more like Eagles, Firefall. Why didn't they throw you there? Why didn't they?
Yeah, Firefall in those days, and we tour a lot with them now, but they were touring with Fleetwood Mac. That's where they were.
I throw you in with them too. I mean, it's all very similar to that. It's that.
Right. Well, that's just what radio. We had that hit, and it kind of cast us in that style, even though it was very atypical of everything else we were doing.
That's another confession I have to make to you, and I feel like I'm at the confessional. I was born and raised a Catholic guy. So when I was born in '66, so I'm coming of age in the '70s, and in the '70s, classic rock was just starting what is now classic rock. So, Foghat, Blue Oyster Cult, Cheap Trick, name all those bands, Todd Rundgren, the list goes on. This is what all my buddies were listening to. This is what was on FM as it was growing. But yet I had this softer side when I'm listening to When No One's Around, Orleans, Ambrosia, Jackson Brown, but I really couldn't tell my friends. Do you know what I mean? Is there a little bit of that with you, with you guys? You know what I mean? Like, you come on. I don't know. There's Eagles, maybe even early Eagles falls into that. Like, this is.
Well, you can't fault the Eagles are just class act all the way around. I mean,
you know what I mean? You guys had like that softy.
Right. We were soft rock. The Doobies were edgier.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Similar, but edgier.
Yeah.
And that was
another
thing.
I was a little embarrassed to say that I was listening to, and I'm sorry to tell you that.
No, I get it. We were the soft rockers. That was the thing. We were never sex symbols. We weren't Aerosmith. You know what I mean? That was not our thing. We were more like music for thinking people.
Yes,
and very female audience. Yeah,
I imagine. Yeah, and when I'm 13, 14, 15, 16, and the testosterone is flowing, and all my buddies are, listening to some heavier stuff, I was really listening to you guys, but I couldn't tell anyone at the time.
I know. Like there were Beatles guys and there were Stones guys, and you were one or the other. And we were basically Beatles guys,
Yeah, but it does seem like you were pigeonholed into something you weren't, because you're right there with the Eagles. You're right there with even someone like the Marshall Tucker Band, maybe. I don't know. To me, you're something what you were not pigeonholed as. You're thinking man's rock, soft rock, but yes, it did have that glossy, sugary pop vibe to it too. You have to admit that.
So that was part of the polish, and we moved forward from Let There Be Music album to the Waking and Dreaming album. And again, lot of good stuff on that. And Still the One was just a song among songs. And Chuck also helped sculpt that.
Another classic. Those two albums are in my top 10 of all time. So this one, it's outstanding. Reach. I can just, that pumps me up every moment I listen to it. Just listening to Reach. Spring Fever. I love these songs.
So there you hit, now you hit a nerve, because Still the One was, a big hit.
Yeah,
it was a big hit in the summer of '76. We were on tour with Jackson Brown, our label mate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this was kind of really the peak.
Was he the Pretender then, I think? Was that?
It was
I think that would have been
it was just
Late for the Sky.
It was Pretender was just, I think, Running on Empty was the next thing. It's right in that time period.
And he's another one of my favorites. He's right up there with. So what's that like? Where did you see him as a peer? Or did you see him as this god?
I was a huge Jackson Brown fan, unbelievably big.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to be Doug Haywood. I wanted to be his bass player, right? But I was a stoner. I was a young kid. I was intimidated by everything around me, because I was just hanging on for dear life with these older, more accomplished people. I was afraid of being found out to be not that good. And,
man.
That was my head. And for all the time we spent on the road, I never had one conversation with Jackson. Never, ever.
So you're on the same tour bus or not?
On the same tour, and never had.
You want to approach him? Get out of here!
No. Like, what am I going to say? I love your music, man.
Yeah, I know. You don't want to be that guy, like I am to you.
Right. And he was the headliner. We were the opener, and there you go.
Was he cool? Was he cool the whole time? Was he just?
As far as I could tell, but I have limited memory of the time, and
you kind of knew your place in a way. Like, okay, I'm a younger, newer guy here. I'm upcoming band, but we're killing across the country. But I better just stay put.
I was just better. Yeah, under wraps.
Oh, that's cool.
That was that, and so on the heels of that, on the success of Still the One, Larry was sure that Spring Fever should be the next single. He was sure that, because it was similar sounding, it was in keeping, it would have done its cycle, and it would have peaked in the spring of '77. It would have been time, right? And he had written it, right? And so it was his time. But John, being the lion, insisted, no. And he lobbied heavy. Reach has to be the next single, because John always wanted to be the lead hit singer, and he never really accomplished that. So that kind of tension.
Egos are always involved, I guess, right?
That's right. That kind of tension was happening big time. And John won that thing, and Reach did not.
I was going to say, Reach never went anywhere.
It was like a mid-Atlantic states regional something or other. But it was in retrospect, I believe Larry was right. It was a bad call. It was a missed opportunity.
Whoa, that's cool. They're my two deep cuts. So I don't think anyone else, that's my deep cuts. How dare you?
So that kind of stuff was brewing. We also had added another drummer, Jerry Murata, came in between the two albums, between Let There Be Music and Waking and Dreaming, played on Still the One. Actually, Wells was sick that day. Wells was sick the day we cut Still the One. So Jerry was the only drummer on it, and it worked fine. So it's just one of those things that happen. And
well, Lance, I have to ask you then. So that song, Still the One, was written by John, right?
John Johanna.
Is it just, your classic happy together, lovey-dovey song? There's no deeper meaning to that, right?
The story is that Johanna's friend approached her and said, everybody's writing all these breakup songs. Can anyone write a stay together song? So Johanna scribbled a lyric on a envelope.
Get out.
And handed to John, and he said he had the changes in 15 minutes.
And usually that's how the most poppy, great songs turn out. No thought at all. They just happen. They are.
And then we played it at gigs, a certain way, and then we got in the studio and then redefined it, and it came out how it came out. And then it was like, who knew?
So
and now
So stop me, please, if I'm crossing my boundary. So WNEP, the TV station I work for, is an ABC affiliate. And when I'm just a teenager at the time, there's Happy Days, there's Laverne and Shirley. ABC and WNEP, the station I work with, ruled the airwaves. They ruled the country with all these hit shows. And then your song becomes the theme of ABC,
Right.
that 1976, 77. So how does that happen? And do you guys get any revenue from that? Or, what's that all about?
It was actually 77, 78 with the years.
Okay, 77, 78.
And so what I'm telling you is this tension had been building
on
a lot of fronts because, and so everyone vying for space, only so much space, these tensions, what song is going to be the next single, all that stuff.
Right.
And then this deal comes along for John, which is just icing on the cake because John, as it turns out, and this was not known to me for maybe decades, he, for his own reasons, let's say that, he decided it was time to go out on his own. And I think that deal helped enable that economically and otherwise, like proof of the pudding. And we didn't have any structure to share that kind of money. There was no publishing pool. There was nothing like that. So it was then the haves and the have-nots. And so it's one thing when you're building and everybody's pulling in the same direction for the similar goal. Right. It's another thing when you have something, only it's not spread evenly, and then agendas diverge. So come the fall of 77, John left the band. And I was the last guy to know. Larry knew before the fact. I was told, it's over. That's the done deal. And he went on to his solo career, and we were left like, what do we do now? And that that put a lot of stuff in the air, and everybody had opinions. Management didn't step in and say, you know what, John, you can have your solo career, but you should have the band too. They didn't try to heal it.
Right?
They didn't try to heal it. They didn't do that. That was another bad thing. And the label said to Larry, your band, Orleans is good, but you can make a better band around you. And then so that got me out, right? I was out of the band.
Suddenly. Why? I don't get it.
Because, people put stuff in people's ears.
Yeah, but your brother's the bigwig.
I know, but it was like...
No one's going to do that to their little brother.
Well, it was like, he thought it was like, okay, I'll do that. And so he got, Wells continued, Larry and Wells. And the guy I mentioned before, Bob Lineback from Buffalongo, he became in Orleans. And a guy named R.A. Martin out of L.A., and they made new demos and they made a whole bunch of things. And meanwhile, I went off to play with a guy named Garland Jeffries. Jerry Marotta got me in that band. Garland was like a cult hero at the time. And ironically, even though Larry kicked me out of Orleans, Jerry and I recruited Larry to play with Garland. So
yeah, but this is your own brother. Are you ticked off?
I know.
Can't you go into the bedroom and have a fist fight and say, what are you doing? Or it wasn't like that?
It was more like call a lawyer and see what happens,
Oh, so that's that. Oh.
But there was nothing to be done there. So anyway, this time period, 78, a lot of change, a lot of this and that. And then ultimately Larry saying, yeah, you need to be back in there. And we shopped these demos. The last one cut in Larry's living room was Love Takes Time.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's a Forever album. The next one,
4-track demo cut in his living room at the tail end of, these are the songs we have. And that got shot.
Your brother wrote that song.
Yeah. Yeah, he wrote that, and his ex-wife had a hand in it too. But
if no one knew anything you're saying, to me, it's a seamless transition. It seems like all the other great songs from Orleans and the preceding albums. Like no one would say, oh, this is a different vibe or this is a different song type. It seems to flow perfectly.
Well, the things that were Larry's voice, key thing.
Yeah.
The vocal sound and approach, key thing. The pop nature of the songs. Yeah, that all worked fine. So we shopped that, and there were two labels. We wanted to be on Epic, and they made us a good offer. But there was another label called Infinity, which we gave them a number that they should have said, "You're kidding me, right?" No, they said, "Okay."
Oh, really? So you just
And
shot
so-
high and it worked.
Yeah, it's like
Oh, that's great.
it was like stupid money. So we wound up there, and which might have been a mistake too, because we went through all that money. We went through it all.
Oh man,
We spent a fortune.
it's a classic rock and roll story you're telling.
It is, and they were only in existence for like 2 years. They were the last of the big time spenders. They got sued and shut down, and so After Love Takes Time was a number 11. It was a hit, and we did another year or something of touring. The 80s set in, and the 80s were not kind.
No, I know. That's when the whole world shifted. I got that.
Not kind to us.
Before I get to that 80s album, because I got a story to tell you about that. I still with the song though, Still the One. Are you saying that John, because he wrote the song, got all of the monetary profits from that, like with the ABC and the sung across the country and all these TV shows and everything, or Orleans didn't share that?
That's right. So the way it works is this: when somebody licenses a song, in other words, they contract to use it for a movie or a commercial or a whatever.
Okay.
In this case, a big time campaign. Then there are two different pools of money. One goes to the writer and publisher, and the other
that's John.
And the other goes to the who owns the master. Now, if they're not using our version, as artists, we get nothing.
So they didn't use your version?
No, because they never used our version. They
I
made
didn't know that. I never knew
made
that.
sound-alikes, right? You remember what it sounded
Yeah.
like. Yeah, it was little
I never thought about that.
excerpts and parody lyrics and other singers and little, they never used our version. So none of that money flowed to us. It all flowed to the jingle people and to the writer publisher.
Which is John.
So, but yeah, and so that's how that works. It's just how it works. It's not like anybody slighted anybody. It's that we didn't have any mechanism to share that stuff. Never did.
Do you remember sitting home watching TV and your songs playing on ABC? Forget about the radio stations. Here it's on national TV and thinking.
I don't remember that, but I probably did. So there was
interesting. I didn't know that. That's how that works.
So John went off. John went off. He had the John Hall Band. Bob Lineback again wound up with him in that band.
And I think John I remember having that album. There was a couple hits or maybe one he had in the early 80s or late 70s.
Power was kind of an anthem for the
MTV. Okay.
He was the spearhead.
Like neon lights on it or something. I'm trying to picture the album cover. Okay.
It was Power and there's All of the Above was the two John Hall albums.
But basically he tanked with that. I mean, that didn't blow up across the nation. No offense to John.
He did he didn't have a top 10 hit like we did.
I wonder if his expectations were let down, is what I'm saying. Did he think I should have stuck with Orleans? We were riding high. I should have. I wonder at the time.
Well, maybe not at the time. I mean, we'll get to the moral of that story. But what he did do, he was the nexus for MUSE, the Musicians United for Safe Energy, which was the No Nukes concerts, which included, Springsteen, Bonnie Raitt, and Jackson, and Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and the Doobies.
John fabricated that? I didn't know that.
That was John's baby.
Whoa.
Yeah, and Power, the song he had written because they were going to build a plant 5 miles away from his house.
Oh, got it.
That was the anthem for that whole movement, from Pete Seeger to James Taylor singing it. So that he scored on the map there with John Hall Band and the No Nukes thing, and it was part of his activism, which he's always been about. And
I was going to say, since he became a state rep in New York,
he became a congressman eventually. Yeah.
So did you always sense that in him? He political.
He
liberal
used to,
thoughts. Very.
he would take time in a concert. He would take an inordinate amount of time on stage, quoting statistics and nuclear this and that.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's like, John, please,
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah.
please,
There's a time and a place, right?
yeah, please stop. You know, and so he was always about it. But he made a thing of it. So that was so we entered the 80s, and you got to remember this was like oil crisis where people were gas lined up.
Yeah.
So oil was short, so labels were melting down vinyl to reuse it. They were cutting rosters. Cassette tape happened in like 79, and people were copying albums, not buying them.
I did that. I'm a horrible person.
All this stuff happened, and the labels cut acts and cut staff, and it went into a whole different thing, and time changed, and it was not our time. So we kind of folded. We wound up in end of 81, broke basically.
Get out, done.
And then went into like more versions of the band, lesser versions, and played everywhere we could get a gig because we had bills to pay. And Larry and I did that till 1984. And in September of 84, we did a particular gig. Larry lost his voice. It was like, okay, enough. We're done. We're done. We're just done. That was September of 84. Now, Wells Kelly, our fabulous drummer who had left us in 81, again, a lot of tension. He was on tour with Meatloaf he was playing for Meatloaf, and they were in London, and he was partying with Huey Lewis and whomever, whatever. And he had a rock and roll death. He partied too hard. He didn't make it home. He fell on his stoop, and he vomited and asphyxiated. And that was tragic. He was like 34 years old.
Wow.
And really at the top of his game. So that's the first tragedy we'll talk about. And that event, though, that created a memorial concert back in Ithaca, New York,
Okay.
where it all started. I was not able to attend, but Larry and John did. And this was 7 years after the breakup, you got to imagine. And so they got on stage for the first time after 7 years, played together, sang together, and went, wow, that's really cool. So that was time to bury the hatchet. And we had a standing offer, or John had a standing offer from Tony Brown, who is a Nashville music mogul, played piano for Elvis, that kind of thing, and came the label head at Universal, MCA Universal Nashville. And so Tony said, if you ever want to do your thing, come talk to me. So we got a deal to cut an album in Nashville. This was 85, called Grown Up Children was the album. And we got Nashvilleized, which means you don't play on your record, you sing on your record, and they use all the session players.
Get out.
John got to play on tracks, like to guide them. Larry got to do a few overdubs. I didn't play a lick. David Hungate, the bass player from Toto, was on the production team, and he played all bass. And we sang over it. And it was neither pop nor country. It was right. We bucked the system, and it came out in the middle. And there was no Restless Heart at that point. There was nobody who had done that successfully, like crossed over.
Yeah.
Right? It was before that. So it was pre-Restless Heart, and it failed to make a mark. And so that was 85, 86, 87. We were done, and we folded again.
But you skipped over One of a Kind, which I kind of like. Now,
well, okay, so
you're not there, or
all right. We'll backtrack. So we talked about the 80s. Forever, 79, Love Takes Time, hit.
Yeah.
And the label folds.
All right.
It's an MCA subsidiary. We want nothing more than them to let us go.
Okay.
So that we can shop having come off a hit. And they say, no, we want you to make another album.
More.
Make another album. So we make another album. It doesn't do anything. They bury it. And there we are. And
I'm in 10th grade. I bought it and I liked it. Okay. I liked it. I like Circles. I like One of a Kind. I like Found Someone. I like Move On is a great song.
That's not even the album we're talking about yet. We're talking about, it was simply entitled Orleans.
Oh, so I don't even know of that one, maybe.
It's entitled Orleans. We call it Orleans 1980. And it was,
I don't even know that one.
it was recorded at Wells's property on a cabin. And it had everybody who'd ever been in the band. It was me, Larry, Wells, Jerry Marotta, his brother, Rick Marotta, was on it. Bob Lineback, John Hall played on the tracks. R.A. Martin, who was in our band. My brother Lane did some cameo singing. Everybody, anybody who'd ever been in the band was on that record.
But you're saying it was forced, no passion, just satisfying the record.
No, it had some good stuff, but it was, again, a self-produced
I see.
near miss, and the label didn't hear anything and they buried it. So that was that. And then we struggled, we got new management. We tried again and again, and we wound up with this little tiny deal that resulted in One of a Kind.
That's the one I'm talking about.
In 82, you're talking about. And it has, again, some decent near misses.
Yeah.
And that led us to the 84 event where we said, the hell with it, we're done.
And music's changing too. Now it's all electronic drum machines. It's here comes a new wave.
We cut Let It Be Me. That's what we have, Larry and me. This is going to be okay. Hall & Oates had You've Lost That Love and Feeling. Let's do that. We'll make a really obvious cover. And no sooner did we do that than Willie Nelson put out Let It Be Me. Like, all right, can't win for trying.
You can't get a break. You see, this is a dead end street. You're thinking, right? This is it.
So 84 happens. Wells passes. John and Larry bury the hatchet. We come to Nashville. That is a good album that doesn't do anything. We do 2 years on it. We fold again. We come back in 90 to do an outdoor concert in Woodstock. Beautiful setting called Opus 40. You should look it up. It's fantastic. And it was a smash success. Labor Day weekend, 2,000 people on the lawn. I mean, it was just like, wow, this is really good. Let's keep doing this. So, I'm sorry. I've missed the story. We come back in 1990 now. Where 87 is when we kind of folded.
Yep.
90, Robbie Dupree, Steal Away, who I lived with when he was like not Robbie Dupree yet.
Is that right?
Yeah, we had a band house, a bunch of us. Right? So Robbie had some connections in Japan, and he was doing some productions, and so he hooked us up with this deal with Pioneer or something over Japan. So so the plan was to come back and do 2 nights live Phil Theater right there out in Woodstock, and we'll make a single CD live album. Well, we did that, and it turned into a double CD live album. So we got so much material out of this reunion, and that's a really, really good record. I mean, so the band was a little bit bigger. It had a guy named Paul Brannon. Boy, what a great guitar player and sax player. Unbelievable. So Larry, John, me, Paul, Bob Lineback, a couple other guys. And so that was 90, and that set off the 90s. Meanwhile, I had moved to Nashville. I moved to Nashville in 89.
Are you doing like session work for others, or are you just?
I moved down here on a fortuitous phone call from some old friends that I hadn't heard from in 10 years. And it's a good long story, but the short story was I really, really, really needed a change. I was not doing well. I was at the bottom of my game. I was asking the universe for a sign, help me out here, something. I get home. This is January 10th. Now, my birthday is the 9th. It's the day after my birthday, 1989. There's an answering machine. It's 89. And it's from Michael from Nashville. Call me back. Okay. Call him back. It's my old friend that I hadn't seen in 10 years. He and his little band, they'd gone to Nashville and struck it big with RCA, had a bunch of hits. And their singing bass player was quitting the band on the eve of a 40-city tour opening to George Strait and Billy Joe Royal. And did I
Universe is speaking to you.
Did I want the gig? And the guy quit on my birthday.
Oh man, see, it had to be, man. This is
Yeah.
it.
So that brought me to Nashville, and I was in their band and for 2 years, overlapping this thing.
I don't know this band. I don't know this band.
Bailey and the Boys, and they had their day.
Okay.
They had their day, and they had like 10. Like they never had like a career song, but they had like 10 top 10s.
But you're getting paid. You're doing what you love. Everything's okay.
That's right. So I changed my life, and I'm doing that. I'm here in Nashville. Orleans rekindles. I'm straddling the fence on both those things. I went on from Bailey and the Boys. I worked for Susie Boggess for a couple of years. I worked for other, and then come 94, Orleans went to Japan. Actually, we went to Japan in 91. What am I thinking about? After we did that concert for Robbie's people in Japan that yielded the double CD, we did a tour Japan in 1991. And there's a laser disc of that, and that's fantastic too. That's killer stuff. That's like a really prime time, maybe peak time. Larry's voice was.
And that's available?
Unbelievable. I have posted all this stuff to YouTube. It's all posted.
You hear that, people? Search it on YouTube.
Yeah. Orleans Online is the channel, and if you look up, Japan 91, like part 1, 2, 3, all this stuff, all this history is posted there. That's what we did in the lockdowns. That's what we did all the last year, every week. I called the library and would post some other show from all the different years and versions of the band. And so fast forward, 94, we did another tour of Japan. We did a record for Japan called Analog Man.
No.
Analog Man, and Analog Man was a song on it, and it was John and Larry.
Yeah,
and
I have that. I have all these.
Bob Lineback, and Peter O'Brien on drums. And so,
why Japan? It's just that they cling on to certain artists. They cling on.
They really love Orleans, and they were open to have these deals. And so we made that record for them, and it was we thought that would become a US album, but by the time we got recording again, like a year later, we had a whole new batch of songs. And that's what you know as the Ride album, which for me is like some of the best stuff we ever did. So Analog Man made the cut. Heaven got remade. A couple of songs, made it from Analog Man to Ride, but Ride had a whole new batch of stuff on it. And
I like Ride.
And again, another that was on a label called Dinosaur, which was apt because they went extinct very quickly. And so we packed it in again.
I'm wondering if a part of the resurgence at the time did nostalgia start creeping in? I wonder. There's that nostalgia.
Not quite yet.
Not
quite yet. It's a 20-year cycle.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I was say you're getting close, though, right? Yeah.
So 94 was Analog Man. 95 was Ride, and 95 economics were such that it wasn't. So there was money to be had, but not for the whole band. So we did the whole year as trio, just John, Larry, and me. And we played clubs, and we landed the opening hors d'oeuvre spot on the Can't Stop Rockin' tour, which was Fleetwood Mac, REO Speedwagon, and Pat Benatar.
Ooh, baby.
And so our job was to do like 15 minutes in the front acoustically, just the three of us.
I don't know.
We packed up our stuff in a van. We had one, man Friday and us, and we would ride in the van, get to the gig, do the gig, have to leave right away to get part way to the next gig. They had buses. We just had us. I had maps. This is 1995. I had all the little booklets from Holiday Inn and Econo Lodge and all that. And I had to figure out how far could we go and what hotel to book. And we had to go like 2 hours and then drive the rest of it. It was a crazy, crazy time. But
so at this time, though, are you married with kids? Is that getting in the way or no? I mean, am I getting too nosy? I don't know.
No, I was married when did we marry? 84, but we'd already been together 5 years.
Well, that's interesting. You're getting married in 84, and that's at a low point in the band curve.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. So we were together in 77,
Okay.
right? We started, and 78 was great.
Yeah,
79,
rock star,
okay,
global.
Second Coming, all that.
Yeah.
And then Crash and Burn, and then 80, and then we finally married in 84, and then by 88, it was done. Like she really grew, and I really caved. That's what I'm talking about. That magic phone call that saved my ass, right?
Yeah.
So I went off, and then I got then I married again. I married in 80, I'm seeing 90, 91, because the pregnancy, and okay, here we go. So
all right, hey,
my older daughter initiated that, and so I was
that's
married.
The universe again. That's the universe. That's
right. And so married again for 6 years, 91 through 96, and so that we're still in that timeline. And then I, if you want to know everything, that's when I hit my bottom. That's when I bottomed out. That's when my life was just a shambles. I was broke. I was out of work. My career was dead. I was angry. I was divorcing for the second time. I had 2 little kids, 5 and a year and a half old.
And what year is this now? This
is at the beginning of 96.
Wow.
So Ride, we just finished Ride.
Yeah.
I just put my heart and soul in it. I drive home. It's the holidays. It's over. Right. So come January 96, I hit my bottom. And that's when I had already lost all interest in drink and whatever. It wasn't any fun anymore. I just quit.
Yeah.
I quit, but I had to fix my life. And so that's when I, found my current spiritual path and all that stuff. But that was the turning point. And we go from there, 96, through a few years of kicking around Nashville, working for interesting artists, nobody really big, Shelley Wright.
And you're living in Nashville. You're living right there? Okay.
I'm still there, and I'm here now. Matresa Berg, who wrote Strawberry Wine, Song of the Year. I did a little tour with her.
So you're making money, you're doing what you love.
I'm rebuilding my life. And so 97, what's next? I think, and then I was
ready to kick in. I think the nostalgia act is ready to kick in.
So
isn't that when does John Hall now start oozing back into your world? Because the whole representative thing was what, mid 2000s, late 2000s?
No, we're getting there.
10, 11.
We're getting there, and we're taking our time getting there, but we're doing it. So there wasn't a hell of a lot going on. I did work with this great band called Kaylee Rain, Irish American pop.
Yeah, I don't know
so
that.
Much,
I don't know that.
So much fun. Yeah. So much fun. So great. But there was absolutely no money in it, and I couldn't do that. And but all this leads up, and then I worked for a kid named Andy Griggs, who out of the box had a #1 country song. And that was a total fluke. He just saw me play for the writer of that hit at some showcase. And he came up and he said, when I go out on tour, I want you to be in my band. And I'm like, yeah, kid, great. He's 20 something and I'm 40 something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, okay, great. But he called me and I spent almost 2 years with him, which led me to this 2000 concert in Woodstock that I mentioned before.
Right.
So Orleans reconvenes to do this outdoor show. It's a huge success. It's economically great. It's just so much fun and exciting. And we go, okay, let's do this again. So it's Larry, John, me, Bob, and Peter on drums. And that kicked off the 90s. We went to Japan in 91. We went again in 94. We did the Fleetwood Mac thing in 95, trio gigs, 97, 2000 forward. Okay, so we did a lot of shows those years. We made a compilation CD of live stuff. It was a thing to do. 2002, we put together like Live from the Vaults.
Yeah.
And it was just a collection of really off the beaten track stuff.
But there's no real interaction with the bandmates, correct? There's no hanging out with your brother. There's no.
Larry's in Orlando. Like Larry, he was either still in Woodstock or moving to Florida. John was in.
But I mean, you're resuscitating old stuff just to keep selling some Orleans, correct? I mean,
we were working. There was no great shakes. We were trying,
Yeah.
And so that leads up to, I guess. So John, this is what happened. The Bush campaign. Like John, so we're left-leaners. John's a Democrat. The
Right.
Bush campaign, as you hear these stories all the time, the politicians appropriate somebody's song. They get pissed off at it, say, stop using my song.
Sure.
Right? So the Bush campaign used Still the One.
Oh,
And John was like,
man, you guys kidding.
so John's like, cease and desist. And so with his history of activism, somebody says, John, you can continue to bellyache. You can do something about it. He says, okay, I will. And so he ran. So he decides he's going to run for Congress. And he had already been on the school board. He'd been a county legislator. We figured he'd win. So we prepared for that. This is like 2005. And we re-recruited. Now in 1981, we had a guitar player come in, a guy named Fly Amaro. And he was in the band for a year or two. And then we put it to bed, and then, told you the 80s story.
Yeah.
So we got Fly to come back in the band. This is his second time around, and it overlapped. So as John was on the way out, Fly was on the way in. We did another live album, wound up being called We're Still Having Fun, and a DVD to go with that. And then John's election happened, and he won. So John was gone. So now the band was. Oh, this is what I left out. In 2000, we had two bands. We had John, me, Larry, and up north we had Bob Lineback and Peter O'Brien. And down south, we had my brother Lane on keys, not Bob, and we had Charlie Morgan, not Peter, on drums. And Charlie was like one of the top session players in London. He played for Elton John for 13 years. He played with everybody. If you ever talk with Charlie, don't say a name because he'll give you a story.
Oh, man.
Right? He's got a story about everybody and everything because he was really there. And so Charlie was in Florida. Larry met him, blah, blah, blah. So Charlie started working with us. And then when we made, this is what I left out, 2005-ish, we made another CD called Dancing in the Moonlight. We made our own version of Dancing in the Moonlight, finally, after all those years, because we had played it
right
before it became a hit. Now, to go way, way back to the beginning, when Bafalongo broke up, that spawned Orleans. It also spawned King Harvest.
Oh.
Because Sherman Kelly, the writer of Dance in the Moonlight, and some other Ithaca guys, some who had been in Bafalongo at one point or another, went off and became King Harvest. So we were playing Dance in the Moonlight as a fledgling band, but then it was a hit for somebody else, so we couldn't play it anymore because it was a cover. So fast forward to 2005, we finally make our own version of it. It's the title of a CD. It incorporates some of the material from Ride that nobody had ever heard, really, and a bunch of new songs as well. And so on the heels of that, and we go into John's campaign and going off to Congress. And so the band at that point is Larry, me, Lane, Charlie Morgan, and Fly Amaro, right? So that band persisted 2005 to 2012. And here's where we get to the second huge tragedy. So there was no major recording in that time. There were a couple of songs written that are key right now. Larry and I we were thinking we can do this crossover thing. We can, if you look at Lady Antebellum, Keith Urban, Diamond Rio, Restless Heart, all these country acts that are pop acts, like both.
Yeah.
Okay, we can do that. Let's hook up with some Nashville writers, write some really good songs, make that album. So we endeavored to do that in 2010, I guess it was, ish. And we only wrote 2 songs. And one of them is called No More Than You Can Handle. It was Larry's title, and he had written some lyric, some cockamamie lyric about the Gulf oil spill. And here's the irony. So I said, the kind of guys we're looking for, kind of songs we want to write are like When She Cries by Restless Heart.
Right.
Which was a huge crossover hit. So who did we wind up writing with? We wound up writing with Sonny Lemaire, who was the co-writer of When She Cries. Sonny is a part of Exile, the band Exile. So that song, No More Than You Can Handle, Larry had a title. Sonny and I hated the lyric. We threw it out. We rewrote the whole thing from scratch. And it's become, and like eerily enough, part of a really mainstay of our show, and I'll tell you why. So it's basically a song about like hanging in during adversity. Like, you can do it, you can make it. It's one of those songs. It's uplifting. It's really well written, and so we cut it, but nothing ever happened with it. And then 2 years later, so we're at 2012. John had come out of Congress, wanted to be back in the band. There was no room because Fly was there, and we were fine. We were a fine oiled machine. There wasn't really room. Plus, things were going really badly, really badly. Our management was suing us. It was really bad.
Doing periodic tours, no real hits, just staggering along.
We were working, but because of the lawsuits and all this stuff, we were just sucked dry.
Yeah.
So under that duress and a lot of other stuff, Larry slipped away. It's really kind of a mystery what happened that day and why. We were going to play that week. This is July 2012. We're going to be on Fox and Friends, of all things, on their concert series out of New York City. We're going to go up and do that in the morning. That's the thing, right?
That's a liberal band going on a conservative show.
But it was like, this is a cool thing. We had gigs.
It's a gig.
And Larry and I were just communicating as normal, business stuff, email, and suddenly radio silence. And then I got a call a few hours later from my younger brother, like, "Are you sitting down?" That kind of call. And he told me that Larry had killed himself. And that was like earth shaking. It was just unbelievable. I can't even explain it.
I'm sure no one's ready for that. And
no,
no signs leading up to it, in your opinion, right?
Well, there were plenty of signs, but there was the failsafe was, and let's be real here. I mean, at certain times in my life, I felt like, it would just be easier not to be here. This is too hard. But I never had the guts. I never really, I might have thought about what it would be like not to be here, but I never had the guts.
Most people have entertained similar.
That's right. It's like, this is just too freaking hard.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and I knew Larry had those thoughts as well, because I know him. And so I could see what was going on with him. And we talked about it. I remember specifically talking to him about it. And, that's just not an option, right? Like, that's not a thing. And he said, "Yeah, you're right." And for sure, he would not do that because he loved his 2 daughters so much. That was the stopgap. And yet it wasn't. So one day, I don't know what happened. We were communicating, then it was all over. And that was just devastating on every level. So, not to dwell on it, suddenly everything was in my lap. It's like, what are we going to do? And we had 8 more shows to do that year. I had to make quick decisions. It's like, what am I going to do? What are we going to do here? Well, we're not going to go to New York this week. That's for sure. But I don't want to fold. I don't want to go out with a whimper. I don't want to just disappear. I want to finish this thing. And this was year 40.
Sure.
This is year 40 of the band. And I say, okay, it's not like, are we going to do this? It's like, how are we going to do this? Like, it changed the nature of the question.
Sure.
So I called John, I called him to tell him about it. And then I called him back and I said, can you come back and finish these shows with us? And call Bob, Bob, can you do some shows? How can we finish this thing? And everybody threw in. Everybody was like, yeah.
And at that time, John's political career was over, at least as representative.
Yeah, he was at it. Yeah. And he wanted to be back in the band, but not this way. Right. So I gathered the forces. And it was the most difficult 30 days of my life. It was just hell. There were 2 bank accounts that I couldn't get into, that I had to get into. There were travel logistics. There was
Larry stuff.
It was everything to figure out. It's like, how do we put the train back on the tracks? How do we do this? And it was me. It was on me. And I'm supposed to be grieving, right? And I've got to do all this practical stuff at the same time as I'm grieving my brother's death. So I can't even explain, but somehow I got through it. And 30 days to the day, we wound up doing our first show. And I wrote a blog that night. We went out to South Dakota to play a street fair, and I wrote a blog that night. This is like 30 days after. This is what it feels like. This is what's going on. And that's preserved somewhere. But that was like, Jesus. So there were only 8 shows to do. They stretched from August into November. I put together a fundraiser concert here in Nashville to finish the year, to raise funds for his kids, because they were going to be okay. But in the interim, it couldn't hurt. And so many people wanted to help. They wanted to donate. They wanted to something. It was either money. Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes it's tragedy that then brings out the greatest of human emotions. And do you pick up on Larry's songs? Are you now the vocalist for his songs in honor of him? I believe. Yes.
Yeah. So we'll revisit that. But I just want to mention, so this show that I put together, so many Nashville artists came out and participated. John Ford Coley was there, Jonelle Mosser, Henry Paul from the Outlaws, Bill Lloyd from Foster and Lloyd. I mean, Kathy Bailey, who had worked for Bailey and the Boys, and her husband Michael. And anyway, so many artists came.
The respect and love oozing out.
Right. And we did this big show, and it raised some money, and that was the end. And so we were done. Meanwhile, yeah, what you'd said was, how did you do it? Well, we all divvied up what we had to do. We learned, okay, I can sing Dance With Me, Fly. You can sing Still the One, right? Okay. Yeah. Like that. And okay, we can't ever do this song again. That's Larry thing. Yeah. I learned just how difficult Love Takes Time is. Unbelievable. It's like, wow. I had a whole new level of respect. And I had to learn how to do it my way.
It's a vocal marathon, right?
It's just his range and it's everything about it. So I had to we adapted. We filled in the blanks, and I said, I just got to get through these shows, and then we'll put it to bed. And I had done that. November, we were done. It was done. Meanwhile, I met this guy. We had one it's called the Harvard Square 75 live 75 live Harvard Square. It's a live record from King Brisket Flower Hour that this guy had licensed long ago. He came to town. Right after that, we met. I never met him. Len Fico was his name. And he said, you know what, if you guys, call me. So no sooner had we finished the last show, this is like Thanksgiving time, Len Fico calls me. He says, if you want to continue, I've got a tour for you next year, 2013. And I'm going, well, that's something to think about. And what that resulted in was called, you see that poster there?
Sail Rocking, yeah.
Okay. Christopher Cross, us, Gary Wright, Firefall, John Ford Coley, Robbie Dupree, Player.
They're playing off of Yacht Rock. That's their.
So Yacht Rock was taken, right? but this was a similar idea
Yeah.
with not as good branding. But that was the tour. That was the tour, and Orleans was the backup band. We played for everybody. I was the music director.
So
Charlie
you're not
Moore-
on that concert?
Yeah, Orleans was the second act.
Oh, I was going to say, but yet you're playing in all the other ones too?
That's right. So
Oh.
we did a 5-song set.
Oh, man.
Christopher was the headliner, and Charlie Morgan and I held the whole thing together, and Lane and Fly played some, and John a little bit, and we played for all these acts,
Wow.
and we did the whole summer that way, and it was really great. And so I got to sing Sailing with Christopher Cross, and it was really great in its own way, and it got us back up and running, and so 2013 turned into 14, 15, here we are. And all along the way, I'll go back to this. So that song, No More Than You Can Handle, Larry's title, that it was more than he could handle what was going on, but it's become a real moment in the show when I am able to mention him and honor him and say this was the last one he and I got to write together. And he's no longer with us, and which makes it all the more poignant.
Right.
But it's a song. It's a song about hope, of perseverance, and so it has had this lasting, ironic impact. And people hear it and they go, "Wow, I really needed that. I needed that right now." So it's so odd. Here's another irony: the state of my life, what has happened to me, for me, what I've had to do to grow
Since then.
it's been a real blessing in its own way. It's like it's the other side of the darkness. It's like I would never
Phoenix.
I would never be the singer I am today if I hadn't had to grow into it. I would never. I came out of the shadows because I was always the right-hand man. And he left behind an opportunity for me, which is a whole nother thing. But if we have 5 more minutes, I'll tell you this story. So he had been part of a roster of singers for a thing called Voices of Classic Rock. We're talking 90s now. And it was a single band made up of bunch of people, like Lane was in it, Charlie Morgan, bunch of ringers, and then a stable of singers from this band, that band, the other band. And they would do like a review, right? And so Larry would go sing a couple of Orleans hits and blah, blah, blah. So he recognized that the guy running that was a shyster. So he staged a mutiny to take the singers away and do it. We'll do it ourselves. So that became a thing called Rock and Pop Masters, which was the same thing, only a new business entity. And so Larry was now at the helm, and it was like Felix Cavalieri of the Rascals and Julian Turner from Deep Purple, and I mean on and on. It's like a David Pack from Firefall, a couple of dozen guys, and that band, bunch of ringers, great players. And because there was some kind of conflict of interest with Orleans and that gig and this, so I was the last guy into that band. They already had a great bass player. I came in to fix a problem. And I was the percussionist and the acoustic guitar player and the background singer and kind of the stage manager, because I knew how to do all that stuff. And I was the last guy on the totem pole. Now, we did a bunch of outdoor shows for communities. We did a lot of corporate work, big shows like that with 3 acts, 5 acts, 10 acts, radio shows, that kind of thing. And there was one particular client down in Orlando that had this massive annual show and then some smaller holiday shows. And when Larry passed, the buyer, the head honcho, came to me and says, can you take this thing over? Because I really want to continue to do this. And I said, yeah, I can't sing like him, but I'm a much better organizer. That's what I do. I'm really good at that. I can do this. And so he gave me a shot. And so I became, from the last guy, I became the band leader.
Sure.
So even though I might be like the weakest player, because they're so good, because I wasn't even on my instrument. I wasn't even a bass player. I was doing everything else. I was now in charge of this thing. And it was really just a matter of it's like a middle management job. You gather material,
Right.
you interface with the singers, you feed all the material to these guys and let them do what they do. You go to the show, you just make it happen. And because the team is so good. And that has been, we've done 150 some odd acts.
Really?
Everything from, the Four Tops to the Goo Goo Dolls to Def Leppard to Billy Ocean to, you name it. We did a Run DMC. You name it, we have done it. And I get to do all that.
So as you say now,
because Larry left it to me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So all this opportunity, all this growth, all this, it's a strange way to arrive there. Not the way I would have wished for, but it's
the universe acts in strange ways. Do you feel in some ways now that you're at the top of your entire professional game, or do you want to go back to 78, 79?
No, I may. You know what my top of my game was? It was 2019 before COVID hit. And I'll tell you why. Because in that year, I was doing these massive multi-act shows. I was playing Orleans gigs. I was subbing for Mark Andes in Firefall because he needed a hip replacement. I was playing for Felix Cavalieri in his Rascals band. I was part of an Elton John tribute band here in, I had all
just busy.
And just switching hats. I did an oldie show in Jackson, Tennessee twice a year. That was like 8 acts there. So I had all that going on.
Just vibrant and alive.
Just as stretched as I could be, and almost an overwhelm all the time, but making it happen. And so 2020 was
feel most alive.
That's right. So I don't know that I want to have that much on my plate again, but that's where I got to. And 2020, everything changed, and now it's 2021, and Orleans is back working, and we're gearing up for another one of those massive shows next February in Orlando. And Robin Zander from Cheap Trick is coming, and
I just saw them last week.
Howard Jones, and it's just so cool.
So do you feel now like what I said earlier, the nostalgia thing is kicking in, and if you were to graph this track of Orleans, it's at a low point in the 80s, starts climbing back up and down 90s, and now nostalgia is selling you guys places you'd never had thought of, because people my age are now the kids are grown and they want to hear their songs from their youth.
No, it's happening, and it has been happening. And if you go back to 2013 and the Sail Rock tour,
last 5
years. That was 7 or 8 acts, each guy doing 3 to 5, 6 hits, hits, like this, like a mixtape, of the original artist. And the crowds came out in droves, and they loved it because that's the soundtrack of their lives. That's the baby boomers soundtrack, right? And it continues. And so we've done a lot of shows the last few years. Poco, us, Pure Prairie League, or us Firefall, or us Ambrosia. These kinds of shows, and a lot with Coley and Peter Beckett from Player, and those kind of 3-act shows. We've done some headlining, simple things ourselves, but those are the shows that really work.
What could we expect from you guys here in Eastern Pennsylvania, Southern Tier, New York, New Jersey, something like that? You got anything for us? What's coming our way?
Yeah. So the show you missed in Mount Tabor, you could have come to, because
it was private.
It was private because they didn't want everybody descending on the community, but there was no policing of the border. Anybody could have showed up. They just
if I just showed up, I would have never emailed you, and we wouldn't be doing this now. So there's the universe again.
I said, I don't know. You can come, but I don't know.
Yeah.
and as it turned out, you could have been there. So we're headed back there in October. The 7th, we play in Glenside, PA.
Oh, sure, North Philly.
And then the 8th is at Englewood at the Bergen Center.
See, folks, come on out and see Orleans. Here's your chance, baby. Come on.
The 10th is Lynn, Massachusetts, right outside Boston.
And who do we have? We have you. We have John Hall. We have
It's John, myself, Lane.
Lane, younger brother.
And Charlie left us in 2018. So my buddy from Nashville here, Brady Spencer's on drums. And here's the thing to know. So unfortunately, Fly had a mild stroke just a few weeks ago. So fortunately, he did it when we had downtime because we had to scramble. I mean, he'll be fine. He was like not paralyzed or anything, but he can't tour. And we had to find a guy who could fill those shoes, who's kind of filling Larry's shoes. It's like, who's that guy? Right?
Who is that guy?
Who's got that vocal range, sings really well, plays really great, is available, affordable, lives here in Nashville and ready to go and wants to do it. Who's that? And so we sorted and sifted all these referrals for 2 weeks, and we got down to 2 guys, and we played with them, and then one was the obvious winner. And we've been rehearsing with Tom Lane, who's our brand new band member.
Boom, I love it.
Baptism by fire. Next week we go to Florida.
I thought you were going to say you cloned yourself.
No, but it was like, wow, what stress to be under but we'll make, this is what I do. You know what I mean? It's like, I know how to do this, but it's it's a lot of work to get it all right.
So Orleans pushes on. This is great. So folks, check out the website if you want all the latest information, right? Anything else we want to wrap this up with?
Yeah. So here's the wrap up. Next year is year 50. Who knew?
Who knew? 72 to 2022.
And we have 8 gigs already booked for next year. So next year's year 50. The website is orleansonline.com. Please pardon the antique nature of it. It's a thing that needs a complete redo.
No, that gives it a cool classic vibe. That's what
it's very. So that's a project in waiting, and you can find tour dates there. And here's the thing to know: while we were at home, each of us figured out how to record ourselves at home, and we made a Christmas album. And it's done, and I have hard copy, and it's. I just have to build a page, put it up for sale. So we have an all new music, very weird kind of Christmas album.
That sounds just like my style. And now that it's fall, you know how things go. Christmas starts 3 months before, so now's the time to get this thing. I love it.
Yeah. So there you go. That's our new project. It's brand new. It's not quite out yet, but it will be any day. And that's how we move forward.
I love it. There's one thing I wanted to ask you before we end. Whose idea was this? There's you on the side there. Come on. All the shirtless guys. Whose idea was that?
Here's the story.
And are you going to do it again?
No, please. So that's the infamous Waking and Dreaming cover.
Yep.
The label sent us over to the studio of Norman Seeff, famous rock photographer, to make a cover. There was no idea. There was nothing. It was just go over there and make a cover. And so we did the standard stuff, and the models are walking around. There's holding the wine goblet. It's like that, and it's very LA 70s. And Norman says, you guys are so stiff. Let's take off your shirts and see what happens.
Get out.
And so that's how it happened.
That's
and
funny.
we're not naked. We're just shirtless. And if you'll notice, and this is pre-Photoshop.
I'm looking.
This is airbrushed. You see how John has his eyes
body there.
John has his eyes closed.
Yeah.
And the rest of us are open. Now on the back cover, it's reversed. And what they did was they took the head, John's head, from one and flipped it, because the title is Waking and Dreaming. Nobody gets that.
See, no, I've looked at that album cover a million times. I never got
Nobody gets that. That's the concept. And that is one of what somebody deemed one of the 100 worst album covers of all time. And it's on the internet. And it's actually the cover of the hard copy book of the 100 worst album covers.
Is that right? I didn't know.
Yes.
Oh God.
Yes. And yet, all press is good press, they say.
Yeah, that's right. Look at how studly you look. Come on.
I was like 140 pounds, had 3 chest hairs. And that's
Lance, what a great way to end. It's been great talking to you, man. This is excellent. I think we're all caught up on the life of you and Orleans, and I hope folks really enjoyed this. I did. You guys are awesome. Keep up the good work.
Thanks for letting me rant and go deep into the story.
No, it was good. We need the deep story on things. That's what's lacking in life. So we got the full story, and we surely appreciate that. And we'll be seeing you at a concert nearby soon.
Thank you, Joe. I
love you, brother. Thanks, Lance.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Curiosity. What are you so curious about? Everything, Mr. Curiosity. About